The theory for national abolition is really to drive down death penalty usage. So states that have high execution rates, high sentencing rates, NCADP works to reduce those. And then in states that are closer to abolition, we work on getting more states to abolish the death penalty. And as you can see, they intersect in one area. Now, we're not exactly sure what that will be, whether that's going to be 17 states and most other states not using it, or whether that's going to be 25 states and other states still using it, but it just needs to be compelling to the Supreme Court. At that point, there will be a Supreme Court case that will be taken up, and we'll really try and push the idea that the death penalty is not being used for a number of different reasons. What I like about this graph is that we really, you can kind of see that it really is not dependent on either one. We could abolish the death penalty by just having states not using it, and that would mean, just so folks remember, that's exactly what happened in the 70s when the Supreme Court found the death penalty unconstitutional. And that was without a lot of the states, having the abolition campaigns that we're having today. Now, the exciting thing is a lot of momentum right now is building with, Maryland this year, Connecticut last year, all of those states abolishing the death penalty, making a very vocal, change against the death penalty is very much going to drive that blue line up. So, we're frankly hedging our bets. We're working in every state to try and bring that red line down and that blue line up. And Kansas is actually one of the key states for that. For one, not that you guys have a lot of death sentences, but if the Supreme Court were to look at the death penalty today, this is based on other court cases, more specifically the juvenile death penalty and juvenile life without parole. They're going to look to states across the nation to see, where the death penalty is used, how much it's used, and kind of what the public perception is of it. Kansas is right in the middle. You are not a northeast state. You're not on the coast. You are a plain state. You're a little bit more conservative. All of those factors are going to weigh heavily. So the court cannot say, this part of America uses the death penalty and it's part of their heritage, and therefore it could still be constitutional with these other factors. If Kansas is in the mix, if Kansas gets rid of the death penalty and affirmatively says no, that's going to be huge. Frankly, this is kind of a personal opinion, but really, the death penalty has been, on its kind of last fight for a long time now. And I think, myself and others in the movement have really been waiting for that one thing that's going to tip it over and, make this country realize the death penalty that they see on TV is not the reality. The death penalty that we have is broken and can't be fixed. So I'm hopeful that you guys can, flip us over the edge and make sure that we get rid of the death penalty in the United States. Can we move on to the next slide? All right. Can we move to the next slide?
Okay, you should have the one with the black swan on it.
Okay, well, if you guys can see it, it's not showing up on my computer, but I'll go on to that. So this slide shows what is needed, well, one theory of what is needed for a successful abolition campaign. It's very, very simplified and really shows that you need, legislative support, media support, a strong coalition, and many times an unexpected event. And I call them a black swan. That's kind of the, I guess it's kind of a term in kind of the theoretical of things you really don't expect that are kind of mathematically not known. But the reason I put that in there is because something like that has really almost always happened. For example, for starting all the way back with the first state that abolished the death penalty, New Jersey, they had snow every other day but the day they passed the bill. Other bills were stopped. The death penalty bill was not. New Mexico, they would not have even been able to have their bill heard if Governor Richardson had still been in the state. But because there were rumors about him going on to be the secretary under Obama, they started to gain a lot of momentum because the runner-up, the lieutenant governor, was very much against the death penalty. So they were able to get a lot of momentum. So when, the governor actually didn't become part of the cabinet, the momentum was so big they were able to push it over. And that was something that, many in the movement had said, this is just don't spend your money there, don't waste your time there. And then finally, the one I know most about in Illinois, we were about 5 years away. We should not have won that early. what really pushed us together was the gubernatorial candidate, the Republican gubernatorial candidate, started polling 10 points ahead of the incumbent Democratic governor. And, that's significant because Illinois is fairly Democratic, and also the Republican candidate had said that he will lift the moratorium and start executions the next week after he would be inaugurated. And actually that was just enough to push our friends. It wasn't our opposition that was the main problem in Illinois, but really getting our friends motivated to say this is the time to do it, and to get them to really dig in and move at the speed and intensity that we needed. So, and also just kind of the big bottom line is really that this has to be a big tent, many paths to support repeal. You really can't make assumptions about that you need all four of these to happen. And in fact, there's no way to predict when an unpredictable event is going to happen. Just all you can do is really be prepared to take advantage of that. And the best way to do that is really to make sure you've really done your homework. In Illinois, when we had the governor's race kind of churn in an unexpected way, we had already organized conservative, we had already organized faith groups, we had already organized the folks that were in the limelight because of how well the Republican candidate was doing, and we were able to bring in our message to that. So while we had kind of on one hand a very bad situation where the Republican candidate was given a lot of emphasis on bringing back the death penalty, we were already ready to counter that message and also push it further and say, what, the only thing that's going to fix the death penalty here in Illinois is straight up abolition. So just being ready for that. And if we could go to the next slide, I can get into a little bit more detail of what all of these look like.
Can you see that slide? It's the one with the.
So I think I've got a delay, but I can just roll with it. So just to give you a little more detail about what each one of these looks like, and this is very simplified. As Mary and other folks can tell you, I usually have kind of wall-sized maps like this where you get really into the detail of what it's going to take. And this is really just the starting point, and I just wanted to boil this down so we have a good place to start with. The legislature is really a great place to start. You all have had a lot of success organizing folks at the State House, and that's where you start, that you need the champions. That's the little guy with the cape in the right-hand corner. You really need someone to build up and stand up and say, I do not care what happens to my political career. I want to abolish the death penalty because it's right, and I'm standing here today to say I will not leave or be quiet until this is done. That sounds great, and they don't just pop up. It takes a lot of time to kind of groom your champion. It's something that it's a pretty hard task. You have to figure out who's going to be your champion and how they're going to get there. I think one of the things I really, learned from Illinois is you don't have to have that dream team right away. You don't abolish the death penalty when everybody else tells you it's okay. If you do that, you're going to wait that 5 to 10 years that everybody says it's going to take. If you take what you've got and push as hard as you can, it's really just a matter of being focused and looking at where you're strong. So going on with this, just to get, I'll go to that after I go through the rest of the slide. But the next part, the media, you don't just want them reporting your news. You want the media, yelling for you. You want them to be the advocates. On one hand, there's only so much time and resources you have. So if you have a reporter that's already fired up, a paper that's already on your side, an editorial board that's ready to go with what you want to do, that's an ally on your side that can be incredibly powerful. Moving on to the left top corner, the folks, the gifted people. I cannot stress enough. Sorry, I couldn't think of a better picture for that one. But really, the folks like all of you today that joined us on the phone, you all have different special gifts, and it's really a matter of figuring out how you can use what you have to push abolition forward. For the campaign, we had numerous people that for years they'd be involved, they'd donate money, they'd come to events, and then we would, for some reason it would come up that they had ties to law enforcement or that they had ties, their father was a pastor in this smaller community, and we would that aha moment, and all of a sudden they were pivotal to part of our campaign. So it's really just a matter of, thinking very creatively about who you're connected to and what you can do with the gifts you have to push forward for abolition. And to finish off in the bottom left-hand corner, just really getting the unlikely allies. I think that there's been a lot of stress in the death penalty movement about getting the unlikely allies, but I think the main thing to take away from that is, they shouldn't have been unlikely. These are people that agree with us for the same reasons we believe the death penalty is wrong. And this is a kind of a missed opportunity that I think we're trying to catch up on, to make sure that we have ties to the Republican Party, to conservatives that, understand, what pro-life is, means being against the death penalty. And working with law enforcement that, every day they're on the front lines and they see, how the death penalty doesn't work. So just being able to tie into those allies and making sure they are part of your campaign. And one thing I want to stress before going on to the next one, well, two things actually. One, none of these will be, this isn't this is a four-part strategy that each part has to be 1/4. We definitely didn't have that in Illinois. We had the media on our side very much, and at the same time, it was kind of old news. So it was something that it wasn't a big momentum push. It was something they were on our side, but they'd been saying they're on our side for years. Our legislative champions, the big one that people thought we would have, never showed up. We had someone that was an up-and-comer, and she became amazing. She, after 2 years of working on this issue, was able to, eloquently argue against the death penalty, to stand her ground against even the, seasoned legislators of decades. So with that there, we were able to kind of use our strengths in areas that, we might have been weaker on, and help build up a successful campaign. And one thing I want to say, like this also, speaking to, folks that are in the media or legislators or unlikely allies may not be in your comfort zone, but that's really what it takes. And it's also something that it's not as bad. I mean, I say from experience, there are some days I knew what I had to do and I was not crazy about doing it, but those have turned out to be some of, frankly, my worst and best days. Sometimes it's scary and it doesn't turn out and you get exactly what you were scared of. But you'll have that one meeting where it kind of makes it all worth it, where you get this one person that you never thought would be on your side that will tell you a story about somebody, in their family that was affected by the death penalty. And that makes the campaign. And you made that happen by, taking that risk. Can we move on to the next slide? And Mary, if you can just tell me when it's up, I can just kind of run from there. And actually, I want to turn it over to Lori.